The layoffs started quietly. At first, it was just headlines, a few thousand here, 10,000 there. Another organizational restructuring, another CEO saying the company was becoming leaner, AI-focused, or more efficient. And then suddenly, entire departments vanished overnight. Senior engineers, project managers, designers, recruiters, even high performers, gone. No warning, no explanation, no loyalty, just a calendar invite, a disconnected laptop, and a corporate email thanking them for their contributions. But behind the scenes, something much darker may already be happening inside modern workplaces. Because while employees were distracted by remote work, flexibility, free lunches, and productivity apps, companies were quietly building one of the largest behavioral surveillance systems in human history. It was started the day you installed an app on your phone because your employer required it. It tracks when you wake up, based on when you first check your messages. It tracks where you go, based on which Wi-Fi network your device connects to. It tracks how fast you respond, how long you stay online, how many messages you send, whether your camera was on during your last meeting, and whether you were the one talking or the one who stayed quiet. It knows your patterns better than your manager does, and most employees have absolutely no idea how much data they're generating. Every Teams message, every idle minute, every calendar gap, every file opened, every login, every click. The modern workplace is no longer just about productivity. It's about behavioral intelligence. And now, companies are beginning to use that intelligence to decide who gets promoted, who gets flagged, who gets labeled low engagement, and possibly who gets laid off next. Because in 2026, your performance review may no longer come from a human manager. It may come from patterns generated by AI. And here's the thing that should make you sit up straight right now. 92,000 tech workers have been laid off already in the first 5 months of 2026. Almost 900,000 since 2020. And the same companies doing the laying off are the companies selling the tools that watch those employees before they were let go. I'm going to spend the next few minutes walking you through exactly what is being collected about you, which tools your employer may be using right now that you have never heard of. How Microsoft Teams, the app that is probably on your phone, fits into a surveillance architecture far more sophisticated than most employees have any idea about. How AI is using that surveillance data to make workforce decisions. How those decisions connect to the biggest wave of layoffs the tech industry has ever seen. And what, if anything, you can do about it. Welcome to the simulation files. This file is about you. Let's start from the beginning. Because most employees have a vague, uncomfortable sense that they're being monitored. But vague and uncomfortable is not the same as knowing. So let's get specific. Microsoft didn't just create collaboration tools. It may have quietly created one of the most powerful workplace surveillance ecosystems ever built. Teams is installed on an estimated 320 million devices worldwide. For most corporate employees, hybrid, remote, or in office, it is the primary communication layer of their working day. And here is what your employer, with appropriate administrative access, can see. Every chat message, every direct message, every group conversation, including ones you've deleted, yes. Deleted messages can be recovered by your tenant administrator. Every meeting you attended, including when you joined, when you left, and whether you were active or silent. Every call log, who called who, how long they spoke. Every file shared through Teams, stored in your company's Microsoft 365 environment, version history and all. Read receipts. In some configurations, your employer can see when you opened a message, your present status timeline, every transition between available, away, in a meeting, and offline is logged. Your manager or HR team can reconstruct your entire day from these transitions. And then, as of the February 2026 rollout, your physical location. Microsoft Teams now automatically detects your work location via Wi-Fi. When you connect to your company's network, Teams broadcasts your location. Depending on how your company's wireless infrastructure is configured, it can determine which building you're in, which floor, which specific room. The feature was originally scheduled to roll out in December 2025. It was pushed back, then pushed back again, It finally rolled out in April 2026. It was pushed back 3 times. If you want to know how a company handles internal feedback about a product, watch when they delay the rollout. 3 delays mean someone inside knew this was going to be controversial. They launched it anyway. Now, Microsoft's official statement on this is as follows. Quote, "It is not a monitoring tool, and we do not support employee surveillance in any way. Protecting employee privacy is at the core of how we innovate and build." That statement was given to Fortune magazine. And at the exact same time, on the same platform, in the same enterprise package, Microsoft was selling the productivity score, a feature that assigns a numerical rating to individual employees based on their digital activity. Messages sent, files created, meetings attended, emails replied to. The productivity score was described by data privacy experts in published academic and journalistic work as a surveillance tool, not Microsoft's language. The experts who study this. Microsoft partially walked the productivity score back after public backlash. The architecture, the logging, the tracking, the analytics layer remained because the data was too valuable to actually delete. And here's the terrifying part. Even if your boss never personally watches you, the system might. Algorithms don't sleep. They don't forget. They don't have a bad day. They continuously build a profile of your behavior. How fast you respond, how often you appear active, how many meetings you join, how engaged you sound, how collaborative you seem. And if AI eventually decides who is valuable to the company, what happens to the employees who don't look productive enough to the machine? Could future layoffs be driven by hidden productivity scores? Could remote workers become the first targets because software can now compare digital activity against thousands of employees at once? Some experts are already warning we are entering the golden age of employee monitoring. Now let's talk about the device in your pocket. Because here's where the conversation goes from uncomfortable to genuinely alarming. If your employer required you to install Microsoft Teams on your personal phone, which most hybrid and remote workers have been, you have agreed, without realizing it, to a monitoring arrangement that blurs the line between your professional and personal life in ways that may be legally significant and personally invasive. Here's what that means in practice. When Teams is installed on your personal device, it has access to your device's network. It can detect your location via Wi-Fi connections, not just in the office. It logs your activity status around the clock. When you open Teams at 11 p.m. because you saw a notification, that timestamp is logged. When your status shows available at 6 a.m., that data exists. When you are marked away during core business hours because you stepped out for 30 minutes, that data exists. And here is the detail that most employees never think about. The data about when you are and aren't active outside of business hours creates a shadow record of your working habits that can be compared against company policy, employment agreements, and productivity benchmarks. Without your knowledge, you may be contractually required to be available between certain hours, or you may have asked for flexibility that your employer agreed to verbally. But the system is measuring something different. And in a restructuring conversation, in a performance review, in the quiet meeting where decisions about whose role is eliminated happen, the data doesn't lie. The problem is, the data also doesn't provide context. It doesn't know you stepped away because your child was sick. It doesn't know you were away during a call with a doctor. It doesn't know that the message you sent at 11 p.m. was because you were working ahead for a deadline, not because you were trying to look busy. The system scores behavior, not intention, not context, not humanity. And a peer-reviewed study, published in 2024, titled Private Eyes, They See Your Every Move, Workplace Surveillance and Worker Well-Being, found that surveillance is directly associated with higher psychological distress through 3 specific mechanisms: job pressure, reduced autonomy, privacy violations. You are being watched, and the watching changes you. You stay online longer than you need to. You respond to messages outside business hours because you're afraid of what it looks like if you don't. You modify your behavior to optimize for the signal being measured rather than the actual work. And the cruel irony is that employees who do deep, focused, uninterrupted work often score lower on activity metrics than employees who are constantly, visibly, performatively busy. The surveillance system rewards theater and punishes focus. Now let's talk about what's beyond Teams. Because Microsoft is not the only player in this space, not by a long way. There is an entire industry worth billions of dollars built specifically around watching employees. It has a name. It's called Bossware, and 78% of employers, as of 2026, are now using it. Let me walk you through the major players, because understanding what these tools actually do is the only way to understand what the surveillance architecture around you looks like. Terramind. Terramind markets itself as an insider threat prevention platform. Translation. Your employer has decided before any evidence that you might be a threat. Here is what Terramind can do. Live screen recording, not screenshots. Live recording of your screen in real time whenever the system decides it needs to capture your activity. Keystroke logging. Every key you press, every word you type, every search you conduct, including the ones you don't send. Email monitoring. Not just your work email. Terramind can be configured to capture email content. Behavioral analytics. The system builds a baseline model of your normal behavior and flags deviations. If you suddenly start browsing job sites, if you start downloading files you don't normally access, if your activity patterns shift, the system alerts your employer. OCR text capture. The system can read text that appears on your screen, including personal messages, personal websites, and applications that aren't work-related. And here's the detail that should make you feel deeply uncomfortable. Terramind defaults to stealth mode. It is designed to run invisibly. You may not know it's there. Under GDPR in Europe, this is legally problematic. Under US law, it's often permitted, depending on the state. The software exists. It's legal in most jurisdictions, and it's on 78% of corporate devices. Hubstaff. Hubstaff is Terramind's more polished, market-friendly cousin. It's positioned as less invasive. It still captures random screenshots at configurable intervals, tracks every website and application you use, measures your activity level based on mouse and keyboard input, and, if you're a field worker or mobile employee, tracks your GPS location at all times. Hubstaff lets employees delete screenshots that contain sensitive personal information. Small mercy. But note what that means. Screenshots are being taken first, of everything. You delete the ones you catch. The ones you don't catch remain. ActiveTrack. ActiveTrack's branding is different. It calls itself Workforce Analytics, not surveillance. The pitch is about coaching employees and enabling self-monitoring. The reality is that your manager gets a dashboard that ranks your productivity against your colleagues. A visible league table of human beings, ranked by algorithmic productivity score. Where do you think the people at the bottom of that table end up in a restructuring conversation and the broader ecosystem? Beyond these three major players, there are dozens more. Veriato, Time Doctor, Currentware, Insightful, Desk Time, Monitask, WorkPulse. Many of them offer features Teams doesn't. GPS tracking that works outside the office, website blocking, application usage monitoring down to the minute, email content reading, and, increasingly, AI-powered behavioral analysis. The AI doesn't just log what you do, it predicts what you're about to do. Flag a person downloading unusual files. The AI already modeled that as a precursor to resignation, 3 weeks before the employee put in their notice. Browse job listings on your lunch break? The system has already flagged you as a flight risk, and in a company that's preparing to restructure, flight risks and low performers often end up on the same list. One more detail that deserves your full attention. Researchers at tech security firm Jazz CyberShield documented in February 2026 that ransomware gangs are now using Bossware tools as attack vectors. The same software your employer uses to watch you can be weaponized by external attackers to surveil your organization. Because Bossware was designed to be invisible and comprehensive, it is an extraordinarily powerful surveillance tool for anyone who can access it, including people who aren't your employer. Your company's decision to install stealth monitoring software on your device doesn't just expose you to your employer's surveillance. It potentially exposes you to everyone who can get through the software's defenses. Now let's connect the surveillance architecture to what's actually happening to people's careers. Everything we've discussed exists in a world where jobs are disappearing at an impossible-to-ignore rate. Yet, here we are. 92,000 tech workers laid off in the first 5 months of 2026, almost 900,000 since 2020. In Q1 2026, almost 50% of affected positions were cut due to AI. Not budget, performance, or market conditions. Microsoft cut over 15,000 jobs in 2025. Over 40% were in software engineering, directly affected by AI coding tools. In 2026, Microsoft offered buyouts to 7% of its workforce. Simultaneously, CEO Satya Nadella stated 30% of code is AI written. Plainly, the company selling surveillance tools for your phone is replacing its engineers with AI, while selling AI to your employer to reduce headcount. Microsoft's AI at Work CMO said, "Show me what you took out of our budget by using AI." We're hearing that loud and clear. We've improved throughput per customer service agent by 12% using Copilot. That's real money. We don't have to hire as many people. From the company whose AI reads your meeting transcripts, whose productivity tools score your daily activity, whose location tracking knows which room you're in. Now here's the part that should keep you awake. Microsoft Copilot, embedded in Teams, Outlook, Word, and Excel, was updated in February 2026 to do the following: analyze chat history, meeting transcripts, and calendar content. Generate smart recaps. Surface relevant insights about employee behavior. And in a prompt template published on Microsoft's blog, review emails, files, and meeting transcripts to surface insights about where employees experience friction in daily workflows. Friction. Where do humans slow things down? Here's how that plays out in a restructuring scenario. Your company's HR director opens Copilot. They ask it to analyze communication and productivity data of the customer service team. Copilot generates a summary. It shows which employees respond fastest, which ones generate the most output per hour, which ones are flagged as low engagement, which ones have been showing declining activity trends over the past 90 days. The HR director does not need to observe these employees directly. They do not need to have a conversation. They do not need to make a subjective judgment. The AI has already made an objective-looking one. And here's the thing about objective-looking data. It's very hard to argue with in a performance review. The data doesn't have feelings. The data doesn't know that you were low engagement for 3 weeks because your parent was dying. The data doesn't know that your slower response times were because you were doing deeper, more focused work. The data doesn't know you. It just measures you. And in an era where companies are using AI to justify layoffs, to show shareholders that efficiency is improving, the measurement becomes the verdict. AI was cited in 26% of April 2026 layoffs. 37% of companies have already replaced workers with AI this year. By 2030, researchers project 34% of all work tasks could be fully automated. 60% of occupations will be impacted by AI by 2030. 14% of the global workforce, approximately 375 million workers worldwide, may need to switch careers entirely because of AI-driven disruption. And the youngest workers are being hit hardest. A 13% decline in employment among workers aged 22 to 25 in AI-exposed roles. The entry-level jobs that used to exist as the first rung on the career ladder are being automated away before the next generation can even reach them. We are not talking about a future risk, we are in the middle of it. And the surveillance data collected through Teams, Copilot, and Bossware on your devices is the fuel that makes the machine run. The tech industry has become a battlefield of uncertainty. Every week there's another announcement. AI will replace repetitive tasks. Companies are reducing headcount. Automation is increasing efficiency. Organizations are restructuring around AI. Those phrases sound corporate and harmless, but workers hear something else. You are replaceable. And once fear enters a workforce, Surveillance becomes easier to normalize because companies position it as optimization, not monitoring. Insights, not tracking. Productivity analytics, not behavioral analysis. But the line between analytics and surveillance is dangerously thin. This is why the future of work feels so unstable right now. It's not just AI replacing jobs, it's AI redefining how humans are evaluated. That uncertainty creates fear unlike anything previous generations experienced. Because workers aren't just competing against other workers anymore, they're competing against automation, against algorithms, against invisible systems scoring behavior behind the scenes, and nobody fully understands the rules. That uncertainty is psychologically exhausting. Imagine waking up every morning wondering, am I still valuable? Could software already be predicting my replacement? Does my activity look productive enough? What happens if I slow down? What happens if I burn out? What happens if AI becomes good enough? For millions of workers, these are no longer hypothetical questions, they are daily anxieties. Here's where this goes. Because what exists today is already significant. But the trajectory is where this gets genuinely terrifying. Agentic AI. Microsoft's roadmap points toward AI systems that don't just summarize your communications. They act autonomously on your behalf. Co-pilot agents that draft and send emails, that schedule and conduct meetings, that complete entire workflows without a human initiating each step. What this means for the workforce is not subtle. Every time a co-pilot agent completes a task that a human previously did, the human's labor is no longer necessary for that task. The question that follows, already being asked in boardrooms, is not, can AI do this? It is, why are we paying someone to do this when AI can? And the surveillance data is what feeds that question, because the monitoring tells the company exactly which tasks their employees spend time on, how long each task takes, how much it costs in labor, and increasingly, whether an AI model has already been trained to do the same task faster and cheaper. The calculation doesn't require malice. It doesn't require a conspiracy. It just requires a spreadsheet. And a CFO asking, show me what you took out of our budget. Companies using AI coding tools report that developers produce 40 to 55% more code per sprint. The implication is that a team of 10 developers with AI tools can produce the output of a team of 15 to 18 developers without them. That means 5 to 8 people per team become economically redundant. Not incompetent, redundant. The system doesn't need them, and the data that proves they're redundant was collected through the surveillance architecture they never knew existed. Now, extend that logic beyond software engineering, to project management, to data analysis, to customer service, to HR, to legal, to finance, to the roles that have historically been considered safe because they required human judgment, human relationships, human context. Almost 49% of jobs can now use AI for at least 25% of their tasks. AI exposure scores are rising by 9% every year. By 2030, experts say 60% of all occupations will be impacted. The simulation is running, and it is running on your data. Here is what I want to give you, not just the fear, not just the revelation, the tools. Because if there's one thing the simulation files believes, it's that knowing is always better than not knowing. And knowing gives you options. 92,000 people have already lost their jobs this year. 900,000 since 2020. The same companies building the surveillance architecture are the ones using it to justify the replacements. And the same tools that watch you today are being retrained right now to determine whether your role still needs a human tomorrow. The simulation is running. The file has your name on it. And the question, the only question that matters, is whether you know enough to write a different ending. Drop in the comments right now. One thing you're going to do differently after watching this, because the comment section of this video is one of the few places left where the surveillance architecture can't optimize what you say, at least not yet. Subscribe to the simulation files, because the files that matter most are the ones they don't want you to open. Enter the simulation.